Yesterday I told you about Camary bringing home the cattle off of the Cimarron River. Wanted to share with you a little bit more about that South Bluff because it was uh, is where we actually named our place from that we call Cedar Bluff. The bluff itself sat between Stillwater Creek that ran through our property and the Cimarron River. And so it was really a beautiful piece of property, and it was used the road that went by out the where the Stillwater Creek ran into the Cimarron. The Cimarron had gradually built up sand, and so it had backed up Stillwater Creek, and so for a mile through our property there, uh, Stillwater Creek was like a slough. It was really good fishing. And right down close to the river, the last quarter mile through our property, the road ran along beside it. And between the road and the Stillwater Creek had turned into like a little park area. A lot of people used it to come there fishing. It was a place that you could pull off the road, and there was places there, but it was so messy. People just wouldn't take care of it, and almost every Monday morning I would take my pickup and go down and I would clean up all the trash that had been thrown there for the past week. And so I decided that it was such a nice little area. I would take my brush hog down and I would clean it up, and so it was just a nice kind of a picnic area. Anyway, I built a picnic table to set down there for the people to use. And the first Saturday night after I'd built it out of wood and set it down there, I came down on Monday morning and I got to haul away what was left of the picnic table, as well as all the other trash. They had torn it apart and used it for firewood, some of it. And anyway, so then I made two tables out of concrete. Made a concrete top, and I put a concrete pedestal under it, and I took those down there with my tractor and set them, and I think they may still be there some 40 years later. Anyway, people didn't tear those up. They still dumped a lot of trash there. Well, to the south of that location was across the Stillwater Creek was the bluff, and it was a point that came out between the Stillwater Creek and the Cimarron River. And it was a half section pasture there, and it had cedar trees all over it and some juniper trees, which is a form of cedar too. But it was a beautiful spot out there, and coming off of the road a half a mile to the west was my gate going out there, and it had two trails, where people drove out there. They would go out there and camp, and I had a sign, I built a sign and put up, says, "Please carry out what you carry in." And it was a part of my Monday morning routine to go up there and pick up the trash. And I've picked up a little bit of everything up there. Um, the worst thing I've ever picked up was women's underwear. I don't know how it got there, why, but it was there. But sometimes it'd be a quarter of a pickup load, and sometimes it'd be a whole pickup load. They'd go up there and spend the whole weekend. Anyway, I decided, well, I had put cattle in there and they'd leave the gate open. And so I thought, well, I'll invite them to walk in and carry out. So I put a chain around the wire gate post. The next Monday morning when I went up to check on it, because my cows had gotten out, the gate they'd just driven over it, torn it down. So I thought, okay, I got a nice metal gate. It was made a mistake. It was an aluminum gate that I put up there, and somebody just drove over it the first weekend. So I went to my shop and I took 2-inch pipe that was oil field pipe, and I'm just tough. I built a 4-pipe gate, and I put it up, and they just drove around the gate, drove through the fence. There had a stretch there about 40, 50 feet wide that you could do that. It was sandstone, and we had dug the holes in sandstone for the gate post. Anyway, when they had done that and just tore the fence down, I went up and we drilled some more holes in the sandstone, and I put a railroad tie every 5 feet on both sides of it until there wasn't a place that they could get around anymore. And I even got shot at one time by some people. Now, it wasn't over that, though. The south edge of this property had a section line that was a dedicated section line, just went down to the river and dead-ended at the river. And after about, when things started warming up in the spring, that was a favorite place for the students at Oklahoma State University to go down and have beer parties or whatever kind of parties they had out on the sand on the Cimarron. It really was kind of a nice place, but the road went down and just dead-ended at the sand, and they would go down and they would drive their cars out on the sand, park them and build a bonfire, and that was all right, except they would let their cars sit there all the time they're partying. And about midnight or a little after, they would get in their cars and start to drive out. Well, the car had sunk in the sand. And it was actually the rare Saturday night that I didn't have somebody knock on my door between midnight and 2:30 in the morning wanting me to take my tractor down to pull them out. And I would. I'd get on the tractor and go down, and I'd pull them out. And one time, in all of that, in 3 or 4 years of doing that, one time I had a college student offer to pay me. All the rest of them, some of them said thank you, and some of them were just mad because, I guess they were mad because I wasn't out there doing it. Well, I really got tired of doing that at night, and I went to the county, and I had the county vacate that road, that half-mile road that drove down to the river. And after they vacated it, then I went down and I cut down a cottonwood tree that was about a 3.5-foot diameter trunk, and trimmed all the limbs off of it. And my tractor, I backed up to the butt end of it with the tractor, wrapped chains around it on my 3-point hitch. And I could pick it up sitting still, but if I started to move forward to drag it, the front tires would come off. And using my brakes and whatnot, I drug that tree to where it went across that road down close to the river, but there was no way to drive around it. I had it set, I got it set across that road where you couldn't get around either end, so they had to stop. And no one's going to move this 3-foot log that's 40 feet long. And so they could park there, they could go out and have their parties, and I didn't care at all. But that's where I got shot at. I was over that. I was on my horse over checking it one day, and people had sent bad notes to me and had complained to the county a lot. And anyway, I was over there on a horse, and some people were upset, and they shot toward me. I don't know that they shot at me, but nevertheless, I left. But anyway, nobody drove out on the river after that, but they still camped out on the top of the bluff, and they camped out over on the side where the river and Stillwater Creek ran together. But it was a nice spot. I will hook a picture on the back of this that has my mother and father-in-law on horses on top of the bluff with the Cimarron River in back behind it, so you can see kind of how high it was. But it was an interesting time, and I have a couple of stories I'll tell about people that were camping out on there and various things. Anyway, have a wonderful day.